Hey guys, this is Warhead here with a little bit of a tutorial on how to use my AC130 drone mod. So we're just going to go through the basics of getting it set up, using it, and maybe some tips and tricks about how to do it better or do it differently. So we're just going to do it on Altus because everybody's got Altus. We all know what it should look like. Okay, so here we are at the main runway on Altus. This is the editor. So you've got access to pretty much everything in the game from here. I'm going to show you guys two methods of getting the AC130 drone on the map. One way through the editor and then the other through Zeus. Now, I should add that for some reason, some scenarios, for example, dynamic combat ops, which is kind of an offshoot of the fairly well-known dynamic recon ops scenario. Dynamic combat ops doesn't allow you to drop in the AC130 drone. For some reason, in Zeus, it's not available. Pretty much every other scenario that I've tried, it has been available. However, there are a few story mode missions, for example, like going on patrol as Carrie in the East Wind campaign. The drone is unavailable from Zeus as well. So this may not work from Zeus every time, but it works for me generally, and I'm going to look into how to fix that problem if I can fix that problem. But from the editor, go to NATO. There are also some other versions. So there's one for CSAT and there's also one for the AAF as well. But we're going to use NATO because we're NATO. So it's pretty simple. Just drag and drop and it's there. It has everything it needs already. And then go ahead and put down a guy to be. You can't be the drone. So you'll need a UAV operator. Anybody with a UAV terminal who is of the correct faction. So anybody on the Blue 4 faction with a NATO UAV terminal can connect to the drone. So if you're worried like, oh, I'm playing as, maybe I'm playing as a USA Army guy, or maybe I'm playing as some other faction, CDF, CTRG. If you have the correct UAV terminal, you'll be able to connect. So that's it, basically. I'll put down a vehicle for us to shoot at to show you guys a little bit about how it works, and we'll get a little bit more in depth as we go as well, with like moving targets and things. So we're going to start with a BTR from the RHS mod. I like them. They're kind of cool looking. I'm just going to go ahead and put that in this town over here. So there you go. All right, so with that done, we've got our drone, we've got our dude. If you have a pre-existing scenario that you have and can edit, you can just throw the drone into it and then grab a UAV terminal in the scenario, and it should work just fine. Okay, so here we are in the scenario that we just built. That's the drone, obviously. So the first step is going to be to use your little scroll wheel to access the action menu and select Open UAV Terminal You'll see the map within the terminal, and then up in the left-hand corner, you've got Select AV. It's a drop-down. Select Warhead AC130. And there you go. There's a couple options beneath that: autonomous, allow lights. Honestly, I'm not too sure about the autonomous, like what that does completely, but allow lights I always turn off, especially if I'm doing a night mission so that people can't see the drone flying around 2,000 meters up. It makes it a little bit harder to detect. And I believe the autonomous function allows the drone to use its weapons independent of human input, but I haven't experimented with it too much. I'm going to leave it on for now. And the reason that I'm going to do that is that we can actually tell our drone to move and orbit and things just like any other drone. So we know that our BTR is over in Ethera, so I'm going to hold Shift and left click, and you see that creates an arrow. You should hear the drone starting up as well. So that's going to tell the drone to move there. Now if you right click on the head of the arrow, it brings up this menu here. If you left click on type, select loiter, that will tell it to fly in a circle around the area you've just specified, and then select a range. I'm going to select 1,200 meters just because that gives us a nice broad area. You're not going to be too steep angled. You should be able to see down onto it. So with that done, I'm going to right click again on the head of the arrow, left click on altitude, and select very high altitude. Now if your computer can't render out to 2,000 meters of view distance or beyond, I'd recommend having it set to 3,000 or more. You can select a lower altitude from that list. I believe the next lowest is 500 meters. I try to stay with as high an altitude as I can render to, because the higher up it is, the harder it will be for enemy to notice and shoot down. So if you want your drone to survive, it is fragile just like any other drone. Higher altitude is good. So you can see up in the top right hand corner of my screen, we've got the driver's video feed and the gunner's video feed, and you can see that the drone has taken off once that point has been placed. So it's on its way now. So from here, all you have to do is control the gunner, and then you can control the flight path from the UAV the same way that we've already outlined. So go ahead and click on the control gunner box. Here we are in the turret. You can see you've got all your vehicle readout stuff in the top left hand corner to let you know what your status is. And then in the top right, you've got your weapons and ammo readout. So I'll just walk you through that really quick. So for weapons, we've got a 40mm cannon with general purpose tracer rounds. Basically, they're just explosive, or you can use it as anti-infantry or against light vehicles. I would not recommend using it as anti-armor because it's not going to be able to punch through some of the armor of tanks and APCs that we have. Moving forward, we've got 40mm cannon armor piercing. This is great for tanks or, like I said, other armed vehicles. When you use this, it's automatic. It's kind of a slow rate of fire, but I would recommend firing at your target until it destroys, because obviously one of these rounds is not very likely to totally disable the vehicle right away. We've got the drone's typical complement of 6 scalpel missiles. I believe I added a few more pylons of scalpel missiles in the config file, so I think you have something like 18 missiles or so. I may nerf that in the future. I haven't really ended up using them just because I prefer the cannons. And then our final cannon is our 105mm. We've got armor piercing rounds for that, and then in the scroll wheel menu, we've got high explosive anti-tank, which can be good for clusters of infantry or light vehicles as well. So you can see in our vehicle readout that we are about 1,000 meters up. We've got a really good view of the town that we're engaging. And if you look down there, you can actually see that we've got something on our radar. indicating that there's a target down there. So the drone comes equipped just like any other drone with thermal optics. This is, I believe this is white hot, and this is black hot. You can see it takes a little bit for it to warm up, and just Arma thermals in general are a little funky. They don't always have the correct contrast, and it depends on the weather and the humidity and weird stuff like that. So if we go to our map here, this is how I like to designate targets for myself. We can see our BTR on the map. I'm going to shift left click to drop a pin on it. Now I can see that marker here. You can see that dot that has the distance readout above it. That tells me where my pin is, and there's our BTR right there. And it looks like its cannon is actually pointed at us, so that's not great. We probably want to kill it. So to acquire a target, there are a few different ways you can go about acquiring the target and destroying it. So the first way is to use the drone's built-in infrared sensors, right? So anything that is hot, generally this means like vehicles, you're going to be able to lock onto using that. So you go ahead and tap T, and it brings up a box. Now sometimes this box will be a dotted white line box, or a just a white box in general, and that means that your targeting computer recognizes that it's a target. If it's dotted lines, that means that it's not able to compensate at the moment for it. And if it is a white box, I believe that it is compensating for the range, but not necessarily target movement. But you can see here that we've got a green box. Okay, it just switched to that white box. The green box indicates that it is compensating for target movement, the drone's movement, and that you should be able to fire on it and hit it on your first try. Now, when the target is moving quickly, for example, if this was moving down the road at 50 kilometers an hour, some rounds will hit, some rounds will miss. The farther away the target is, the greater dispersion of each round there is. So, you know, it'll take a few rounds, a few follow-up rounds, unless your target is sitting still. So this target is sitting still. We're going to go ahead and switch to our 105mm armor piercing here. And we've got our green box, so we're good to go. Green, good to go. Put a round down on it, and this target is about 2,300 meters out, and you can see we are a little low there. So we'll go ahead and put another round. And that's a direct hit. And you can see we've got crew dismounting, so they're destroyed. Or they're disabled, and yep, the vehicle detonated. So it really is that easy with vehicles most of the time. And that's the preferred way to do it, is with IR. But if you want to fire on dudes, if you've got some infantry down there that you need to take out, we can do things a little bit differently. So this turret is able to lock onto laser targets and IR grenades that you can grab from Arma's virtual arsenal. So if we have a target down there that we can't lock using our IR sensors, we can lock onto lasers. Now, you could have ground troops that you're cooperating with that can laze targets for you, but the turret also has a laser marker that you can use yourself. So I've turned it on. You can see that little dotted crosshair. That's our laser marker, and we can lock onto that. So you can see that we're green. So we're going to go ahead and switch to our 40mm general purpose rounds here. And we're going to lead the guy because he's moving. And you can see the rounds coming in there. He's down. So any target that you want to shoot at that you can't lock on with the normal infrared sensors, you can use your laser from the drone to create a lock. So I'll go ahead and put down a couple more targets and explain a little bit about how the range and movement pieces work. So I mentioned that you can drop the drone in from Zeus. a lot of people don't have access to Zeus right away in their scenario. You know, unless it's designed into the scenario, you're not going to have access to it. So I like to use SSPCM, Simple Single Player Cheat Menu. It's on the Steam Workshop. You can grab it. If you are the host of the server or an admin of the server, it allows you to load in all sorts of cheats. You can also use it as a non-admin, but specific functions like Zeus are restricted to admin only. So I'm going to go ahead and enable Zeus for myself. And I'm going to do a few things. So first thing, we can see that our drone is still available here. It's exactly the same as when we put it in from the editor. You can just drag and drop it down. Like so. The other thing that you can do is once it's down, if you don't have access to a runway, for example, Dynamic Recon Ops, you may not want to start at a runway if your objective is all the way across the map. You can drop the drone down on any terrain, and then if you hold Alt and left click on the drone, you can throw it up in the air. It's able to move around. You're good to go. You don't need to make it do a takeoff for you. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one since we've already got one functioning. But we'll go ahead and throw some targets down. So we're going to tell this target to move over there, so we have a moving target to practice on. So here I'm back in my body as the UAV operator. If you use your scroll wheel and select Take UAV Turret Controls, you're back in the turret. Now, one of the challenges of firing on a moving target, even if you do have it locked, is it can be quite hard to figure out how to follow it, especially if you're tracking multiple things. Going back to it can be tricky. So this is a general drone tip. It's not specific to this mod, but if you've got your reticle on what you want to target, you can hold Control and tap T while your reticle is on it, and then the turret will automatically follow whatever it is that you tap T on. I'm not sure if this works with infantry. I know for a fact it works with vehicles. As you can see, it's working right now. So you can see that we've got a green box, which means that it's going to try to anticipate the movement, but it does change based on the angle of the drone, the movement of the vehicle, all of that stuff, and that includes range. So each individual weapon and round has its own viable range. And so some targets that you may be able to hit with the 40mm cannon, you might not be able to hit with the 105 just based on the range ability. Now the round will still go that far, you know, if you compensate, but the targeting computer isn't going to compensate automatically for that, which makes it a lot harder to try to figure out if you're going to hit your target because you've got multiple stuff going on. So like I said, with moving targets, it can be a bit of a challenge. It's trying to anticipate where it's going to be. You can see that it is trailing and a little short. So, you know, that's just the nature of the targeting itself. For slower speeds, it works pretty well. I like to anticipate by hand, typically. So I will go ahead and turn on my laser marker and lock onto my own target there. Now you can see we've got green, so we're good to go. And I'm going to just try to anticipate the movement here by hand. You can see that the drone is correcting for the recoil of the rounds. Now this target is really far away. We're looking at 4,000 meters here. That's a challenge to hit. I don't really recommend trying to do a 4,000 meter shot with these weapons especially. But you can see that we're getting hits once the target has to stop, and we've got dismounts, so we know that it is now disabled and it's destroyed. So that's how basic targeting works. Again, just to show you guys the range on this thing, with the 40mm cannon, you can hit pretty much anything, anywhere. The 105, you're looking at a little closer. Let's try to, I think it's about 2,000 meters away from the drone is the limit to its compensated targeting. And generally that's just fine. You can go into your UAV terminal and change the flight path and the loiter radius of your drone as needed to make up for that. So that pretty much covers it. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment below and I'll try to answer them as I can. Thanks for watching.